Hey, Chris, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
No, it's great,
But
man.
Chris, how much did you get to hang around the receivers in the spring? Did you get a chance to go out there and check them out?
Yeah, I was out there a couple times. I had a chance to do some work as we did the SEC Network spring preview of the Gators, and I got to handle that, and then went out there a couple other practices. So, it's a group that I think is maybe sneakily talented, but has not lived up to the potential that they have. I mean, this is a position that's been through so much for a long time, dating back to, I really think the fortunes of the program and that group specifically would have been differently if my former teammate Aubrey Hill would have been able to stay around. I think from his experience and the way that he teaches and coaches, that kind of started a 4 or 5 year period where they had a new receiver coach every single year. And so there were guys that there was no continuity of what they were teaching. There was not a whole lot of attention to detail. And as you remember, Robbie, the reason our group was so good was because Dwayne Dixon was a guy that recently had got done playing. So he's out there running the routes, showing you how to do it. And Coach Spurrier spent a lot of time with us talking about running things exactly the way he wanted you to. And we spent so much time throwing routes on air that it was all about reps and timing and developing that rapport. And I think that teaching maybe has not been there the way that it should have been. But that's why I'm really excited about Billy Gonzalez, knowing what he does, knowing how he coaches. I think it's going to be a group that starts to live up to their potential a little more. With
Gonzalez, it seems like he is into more of technique of how to get open, not just running your pattern, but ways to get open. That seemed to be missing here before.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the last couple seasons, it was really tough to watch as a former receiver, guys that aren't able to get off of man coverage. If you can't beat man coverage, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to be able to play with an extra safety down the box, a single high, you have to be able to win on the outside. And Florida guys at the receiver position just couldn't separate. And until you prove that you can, teams are going to continue to play that way.
So how frustrating has it been for you, though, Chris? Well, over these years, it's been a long time now.
Yeah, I think for me, I am always a guy that believes that the receiver position and the right coach being at that position is an underappreciated scenario. I think a lot of times staffs put a guy, maybe that's the most inexperienced coach or that's a good recruiter out there. Oh, anybody can teach receivers. But there's so much that goes into playing that position, whether we're talking about stance and start, we're talking about getting in and out of breaks, we're talking about just catching the football. Again, Billy Gonzalez is a guy that played the position, that's been at that position for a long time. And so I think I'm really excited about, because of what he's done before when he was here and also his historical track record coaching receivers.
Did any of those guys kind of stick out to you in the spring? Maybe Grimes or the Jefferson kid?
Well, I mean, when you get a guy that's a proven commodity within the conference, I think Jefferson, I love that Ole Miss receiving core. I still love them. I think they're good without him, but he was a guy that's shown a lot of productivity in this conference. So having a guy that can come in, that has those numbers, and can be a leader within that group, I think that's something that they definitely need. You look at Grimes, you look at his body, he looks like an NFL guy right now, right? I mean, and he's got a couple more years to develop. So, I think those two guys are guys that definitely can help elevate what the overall production is at the position.
Those guys seem like they know how to get open. I mean, just watching them in practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where they bring a little different coaching into this program. And so I think clearly they've probably been taught a little bit better, a little differently than what these guys at Florida that are currently on the roster have in recent years.
Chris, a guy as big and talented as Cleveland, how much can he benefit from good coaching now? I mean, what is his potential maybe?
I think Tyree, I had a chance to spend some time with him in the spring, and I like what he's done so far, but he's really been more of a big play, deep ball guy, right? I mean,
run down the field.
Yeah, and that is clearly something he's got the skill set for. He's a long, fast guy that can go up and get the football, but I'd like to see him develop a little bit more of a total package there and be a guy that can catch more of some of the intermittent balls. I think that's where coaching comes into play, is being able to learn how to run those short to intermediary routes. And anybody at the college level can run by somebody. The thing that and I experienced it in the NFL, is there's a lot of guys that played in the SEC that were good receivers, that were deep ball guys, but when they got to the NFL, they hadn't been coached the way that we had at Florida. And so they really were not able to be competitive there, because you can't run by guys with your athleticism at the NFL. So I think the reason I was able to play for 9 years in the NFL was because of the way Coach Dixon and Coach Spurrier taught the passing game, taught how to run routes. And again, I think that's something that Coach Gonzalez is going to bring to these guys.
Have there been times in the past few years where you want to go out there and show the receivers what to do at times?
Oh, yeah, shoot. I mean, we talk, there's a group of us former players that talk, and there's some frustration in the recent past about the passing game, and not only the way that they're running routes, but the play calls. I mean, you got to give guys an opportunity, and when you're running against man coverage a lot, I mean, crossing routes, slants, in-breaking routes, you have to be able to do some of those things, and I don't think the play calls have always been, the best for giving receivers opportunities to be successful. And again, that's what Coach Berger did really well, was play design, play calling at the right time, and then guys that have already been coached to know exactly what they're supposed to do in those scenarios.
Yeah, I can remember Spurrier going out there and showing you guys how to run it.
He would run the routes, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we'd laugh at the way he would run, but it was it was cool to see him, out there. He was an active part of the throwing and catching game, and so I think that's when you have the head coach that has that much emphasis, it means a lot. And I think Dan will be able to bring some of that to this group.
Yeah, he's been out there running around too.
Yeah,
so we'll see. But Chris, overall, in a word, what would you say about this recruiting, this receiving core? Do you think it has a chance to?
I think potential is the key word, and potential's great. But if it's not actually realized and there's no utilization of that potential, then it's just it's wasted. I'm going to be quietly optimistic about this group, and that they may have a chance to be probably the third best group in the conference. I think you look at Ole Miss being number one by far, and South Carolina I think is got a chance to be probably second, but Florida could be right there at the third best group.
It's about time if Florida had a breakout guy receiver, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait to. I think the one thing that I'm most excited about is the positivity of the fan base, and I think there's been such a fractured feeling for a long time that Dan has really come in, hit the ground, and reuniting everybody. And I think everybody's kind of pushing in the right direction.
There's an energy that was gone last year. Now it's back.
I don't think we realized to the extent that it was gone until we saw what Dan has been out doing, and he's been hustling. And I think in an era where a lot of the coaches were trying to do less with the fans, he's kind of gone the other direction and done more, and I think it's been appreciated and well received.
And he strikes me as a guy that really wants to be here, and I never got that feeling with Matt.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, having played for Coach Spurrier, he was the ultimate Gator, right?
Yeah.
His recruiting philosophy is, hey, if you don't want to be a Gator, then
go somewhere else.
We're going without you.
Yeah.
And Dan, I think really without having ever played here, it's the next best thing. Having coached and been a part of a national championship program, he he really wants to be here, and I think that. I always talk about this from a mortgage perspective. I don't ever feel like I have to sell anybody because I'm telling them the truth. I'm authentic with what I'm giving direction on. If you really believe in something, then it's not a sales pitch. And I think he really believes that he's in the right place, that this is an opportunity to win big. And I think that authenticity is something that not only the recruits feel, but the fans as well.
Definitely a change in the atmosphere right now.
Yeah, it is. It's everybody in June and July is optimistic, right? But everybody's undefeated at this point. But I really do think there's going to be I think this is a roster that's much better than 4-7, and I think they have a chance to make a quick turnaround, both because of the talent that's on the roster and the influence of this coaching staff, and also because the East. Let's face it, Georgia is the only real definitive team that we can talk about in that division, so it's an opportunity to kind of make some hay here quickly.
Well, Chris, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Robbie, great to see you again, man.
Thanks for your time. Thanks a lot, Chris.